Hello and welcome to Two Tiers Deep, the Women's Cricket Weekly Show, with me, Rosa Simpkin.
And me, Chloe Hill.
I'm the journalist, working in all the tiers of women's cricket.
And I'm the cricketer, currently playing in the game.
We saw a gap in the market, mainly from a Tier 2 coverage perspective, so we thought, why not start a podcast? To start with, we probably should explain something to you, which, otherwise, none of this will make any sense. Last year, the ECB announced Project Darwin, a project to hand the game back to the 18 counties, split into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is the professional level, consisting of the Blaze, Durham, Essex, Lancashire, Hampshire, Somerset, Surrey and Warwickshire. I could go into the depths about why the Blaze aren't knots, but we'll leave that for another time.
And Tier 2 counties are made up of Derbyshire, Glamorgan, Gloucestershire, Kent, Leicestershire, Middlesex, Northamptonshire, Sussex, Worcestershire and Yorkshire.
And then Tier 3 are the national counties.
Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to give a shout out to our leading partner, Her Game 2. Her Game 2 Cricket partnered the Rose Talks Ball podcast and all the branches of the show, including Two Tiers Deep. Her Game 2 aims to spread a message of hope and equality throughout sport. Initially only in football, they have recognised that discrimination towards women and girls in sport is not limited only to football, so they have expanded into other sports, including cricket, where they can support, encourage and inspire women in the game. If you'd like to find out more about the work they are doing, you can find them online through their website, hergame2.co.uk/cricket, or you can find them on social media by searching for Her Game 2 Cricket. Thank you as always to Her Game 2 for their support of the podcast. This week on Two Tiers Deep, Tier 1 returns. As ever, we'll start the episode with a game-by-game guide of the week of Tier 1 and Tier 2 fixtures, noting our key performers throughout the sides. Following this, we'll be taking a look at both the Tier 1 and Tier 2 tables, with our first qualifier in the South Group of League 2. Then, we'll be diving into England, looking at the Third T20I international against India, as well as the ODI squad announcement. Following our international tour, we'll be introducing next week's discussion, where we'd like you to get involved. And then finally, we'll be revealing our Tier 1 and Tier 2 team of the week before answering some of your questions.
First up in Two Tiers Deep is the North Group in Tier 2. This weekend we only saw one match take place, with Worcestershire v Northants abandoned without a ball being bowled. The other match that took place was Leicestershire v Derby. Let's talk about that. Leicester v Derby's match saw an interesting start, with Derby winning the toss and electing to bat. Being 21 for 5 in the first few overs, we then saw a big rebuild from Ella Porter and Adriana Darlow. Ella Porter scoring 38 off 51 and Adriana Darlow 20 off 20, with the help of Natasha Allen scoring 17 runs as well, with the rest of the team not contributing any more above 10. Leicestershire's bowling attack set the tone, with Lucy Hyam 2 for 14, Emma Thatcher 2 for 16, and a lovely spell from Laura Croft with 1 for 13 off 3 overs. In return, this saw Leicestershire chase this total down and take it all the way to the last over and chase it down in 19.4 balls, 7 down. Francesca Sweet got off to an excellent start again, scoring 23 off 21, but the runs came from Scarlett Hughes and Lucy Hyam in the middle. 30 off 23 for Scarlett Hughes and 36 off 30 for Lucy Hyam. In return for Derby, the pick of the bowlers, Francesca Clark 2 for 27 and Rihanna Nola Davis 3 for 18 off 4. I am going to pick a player of match from this match, and I'm going to go pick one for each match that I do going forward, and my player of the match for this game would be Lucy Hyam. In the North Group, because of the abandoned match between Worcester v Northants, they share the point apiece. So, Yorkshire still sitting at the top with 24 points. And then in the middle, we've got Leicestershire, Northants and Derby all close in points on 13, 10 and 8, which still all to play for that second spot to qualify for finals day. Sitting at the bottom, unfortunately, is Worcestershire, played 6 and only on 6 points. Hopefully, they can get some points in their last 2 matches going forward. Now over to Rosa to talk about the South Group.
Next up in Two Tiers Deep, it's time for the South Group. And similarly to the North Group, only one game was played, as Kent versus Glamorgan was rained off. The game to talk about, though, is Sussex versus Middlesex, with Middlesex taking the victory by 15 runs. It was a massive game for Middlesex, and has secured their qualification for finals day. After winning the toss, Middlesex elected to bat first and hove, and managed 167 for 5 from their 20 overs. Openers Izzy Routledge and Finty Trussler created a positive platform with 35 and 25 respectively. Gaia Goal came in at 3 with steady 30 from 27, before the skipper Saskia Hawley made a quick-fire 42 from 29. The wickets for Sussex came from Ava Lee with 2 for 22 from 3 and Eve O'Neill with 2 for 27 from 4. In response, Sussex only managed 152 for 7, giving Middlesex the win by 15 runs. Loney Daisy Mulan, who has quite literally been all over the place. Last week we spoke about her playing for Glamorgan. She was in the Hampshire squad for their games at the weekend, and now she's playing for Sussex. Could only manage 7 opening the batting. However, Phoebe Wilkinson, with a ball 38, formed the foundation, but the start of the show was Nancy Harmon on loan from Hampshire with 77 not out from 53. She gave the chase a good crack, but wasn't supported, as no other batter reached double figures. Saskia Hawley comes up again as the pick of the bowlers with 2 for 24, and Routledge, Turner and Davis took 1 each. For me, my player of the match has to be Nancy Harmon, even though she was on the losing side. To put together 77 from 53, you deserve a shout out. Now looking at the South Group table, Middlesex have secured qualification at the top, with 5 wins from 6 and 21 points. Glamorgan closely follow in second, with 4 wins from 6 on 19. There's then a bit of a jump, as Sussex in third are on 9 points, with just 2 wins from 6. Kent and Gloucestershire have really struggled, although they have played 1 less game than the teams above, both with only 1 win.
Next on 2-Tier T, we're going to discuss Tier 1. Now, for those that listened to the podcast last week, know that we didn't talk about Tier 1 because this is the first time we're bringing them into this conversation. So, let's go through Tier 1. So, on Friday, we saw Durham v Somerset and Blaze v Hampshire. Durham v Somerset was played at Chester Street, with Somerset winning the toss and electing to field. For Durham, we saw a debut in Emily Windsor, who, if you knew, has moved from down south, the furthest north possible, all the way to Durham. After a long injury, she's back into the side, and it's really, really good to see. For Durham, Susie Bate, again at the top of the order, contributing with 48 of 34 balls. Holly Armitage, captain's knock of 41 of 37 balls. Maddie Villiers, who's been in some serious form, 39 of 27. The pick of the bowlers for Somerset was Chloe Skelton, 1 for 26, and Alice Griffiths, 1 for 28. Durham, in their 24 overs, set 154 for 4, and in return, Somerset scored 148 for 7, narrowly missing out by 6 runs. But this gives Durham their first win on home soil. In return for Somerset, we saw an explosive start from Rebecca Odgers scoring 54 from 37, followed by Jess Hazel later on in the innings scoring a runnable 38. Really, for Somerset, no one else got going, which was quite sad to see in this chase, but they still got close, narrowly missing by 6 runs. The pick of the bowlers for Durham were Phoebe Turner, who's back from her England A duties, with 1 for 15 off 4 overs, Katie Levick, whose name always will pop up throughout the season, of 1 for 26 of 4, Sophie Turner, 2 for 24, and again, Maddie Villiers continuing at excellent form with the ball as well as the bat, with 2 for 24 of 4. So, going to my player of the match, there's only one name for this. Surely it's got to be Maddie Villiers with her contribution with the bat and the ball. If we move on to our next match in Tier 1 on Friday, it was the Blaze versus Hampshire. Not Nottingham, the Blaze. The Blaze versus Hampshire at Chesterfield, Queen's Park. Again, not in Nottinghamshire territory. It was in Derbyshire. Hampshire won the toss and elected the field, which was an interesting choice when we saw the scores last week with Worcestershire v Derby at Chesterfield with a high-scoring match. So, did they think it was going to be hard to defend a total, or did they think it was going to be easy to chase? Looking at this, it looked like they thought it was going to be easy to chase. But the Blaze scored a big total of 188 for 6. Thankfully, down to Heather Graham and Ella Claridge, who scored 73 of 47 balls and 51 of 36 balls, with a partnership of 76. This saved the Blaze from being 4 for 49 to 125 for 5. The only other person really to contribute for the Blaze was Marie Kelly at the top, with an explosive start that we've seen through the years of 16 off 7, and Sarah Glenn with 10 off 5 at the bottom of the order. In return for Hampshire, Freya Davis, 2 for 49 off 4, Elise Perry on debut, and we have to note that she got a wicket on her first ball of the Vitality Blast campaign, 2 for 23 off 3 overs. And the other only bowler who really stood out was Georgia Adams, 1 for 35. In return, Hampshire got off to a really strong start, with Rihanna Southby moving to the top of the order and scoring 64 off 42. Other than that, Abby Norgrove contributed with 19 off 12 and Mary Taylor 20 off 15. This unfortunately left Hampshire short by 37 runs and Blaze taking the win. With the ball, Catherine Bryce had a fantastic run out with 4 for 13, Kirsty Gordon 2 for 20 and Heather Graham again 1 for 35. I'm certainly going to have to give player of the match to Heather Graham for this game, although Ella Claridge's steely innings misses out just by a fraction. But with the ball and the bat, Heather Graham for me takes player of the match. Moving on to Saturday, we saw Lancashire Thunder v Essex at Old Trafford. Lancashire Thunder won the toss and elected to field. Some would say that was a smart move with the weather. This game was rain affected and reduced to 8 overs per side. Essex, unfortunately, being stuck into bat, was stuffed by this choice with 47 for 7 after 8 overs. But they obviously started their innings thinking they were going to bat the full 20. And then the rain came along and favoured Thunder. Thunder chased us down within 6 overs with 2 overs to spare, 55 for 2. Lauren Winfield-Hill was the only person that really got going for Essex, which was 13 off 18. Now, for Lauren Winfield-Hill, we know that's below par for her, not scoring a strike rate above 100. But she did the job at the top to try and get them to a respectable total in their 8 overs. It's great to see Kate Cross always put on a Lancashire shirt and go back to her county and perform. So, her figures were 2 for 9 off 2 overs, and Alana King, the overseas leggy, 2 for 17 off 2. And Phoebe Graham, Tara Norris, 1 wicket each. For Thunder, Eve Jones and Emma Lamb at the top of the order is becoming quite the partnership, with a quickfire 29. Eve Jones 17 off 13 and Emma Lamb continuing her fine form of 21 off 17. Some would say Emma Lamb should probably be there at the end to get her team over the line, but trying to go for that big shot, I don't blame her. This came Elsa Lister and Alana King to come in and finish the game for Thunder and chase it down in the 6th over. Eva Gray was the only person who really contributed for Essex with her 1 over of 1 for 7. Now, the player of the match for that game for me, I was debating and I was thinking about this, but for me, I've gone for Kate Cross, 2 for 9 off her 2 overs to reduce Essex to their 47 for 7 after 8 overs. Yes, some would say that the batters should get it, but I think Kate Cross's bowling performance put Thunder in a great stint to win this game. Now over to Rosa to discuss the rest of the Tier 1 matches.
Now looking at Sunday's fixtures. First of all, it's important to note the weather affected. The Blaze versus Durham was rained off, only managing 4.1 overs of Durham's innings. They were 16 for 1, so maybe a slight relief for the side. Now moving on to Hampshire versus Somerset, where Hampshire secured the victory by 8 wickets. After winning the toss and electing to bat first at Utilita Bowl, Somerset managed 153 for 8 from their 20 overs. Openers Rebecca Odgers and Neve Holland managed 18 and 15. The star of the day with the bat, though, was Fran Wilson, who managed 55 from 32 before being run out by Georgia Adams. The wickets of Luff and Hazel in the middle order for 6 from 11 and 0 from 6 really stunted Somerset's momentum, but Australian overseas Amanda Jade Wellington and Alex Griffiths added to the total with 29 and 13. Freya Davies took the most wickets for Hampshire, but struggled academically at 9.5, taking 3 for 38 from 4 overs. Bex Tyson also took 2 for 19 from 4, and Georgia Adams got 1. In response, Hampshire chased the total with 2 balls to spare at the loss of only 2 wickets, ending on 154 for 2. Overseas star Elise Perry and newly promoted opener Rihanna Southby impressed at the top of the order, Perry with 40 from 33 and Southby with 57 from 51. Freya Kemp soon reinforced this with 42 not out from only 29 deliveries. Vukovic and Wellington took the only wickets for Somerset. And it's safe to say Somerset are struggling. They're yet to take a win from their 9 games played. The player of the match for me has to be Freya Kemp for her quick fire 42 not out from 29, accelerating and making the chase achievable for Hampshire. Now moving on to Surrey versus Essex, which was an exciting one. The match was tied with the DLS method. After winning the toss, Essex understandably put Surrey into bat first at the Oval. And Surrey managed to bat out their 20 overs before the rain fell, scoring 159 for 5. They were in early trouble at 45 for 4, but Kira Chaffley, coming in at 4, kick-started a rebuild with 44 not out from 38, before being reinforced by Alice Davison-Richard with 21, and Phoebe Franklin with a rapid 48 not out from only 23 deliveries. That's a 208.7 strike rate. The pick of the Essex bowlers has to be the pace of Eva Gray, with 2 for 18 from her 4 overs. Kopak and Maksud also took 1 each. Then the rain arrived, and it fell in its vast quantities, shortening the Essex innings to only 10 overs, setting them 94 runs to win. Essex fell just 1 short, with 93 for 5, after an eventful final Grace Harris over saw 3 wickets fall, including a run out on the last ball to prevent Essex's victory. Lauren Winfield-Hill, as ever, was explosive opening the batting, with 49 from 27, but was only backed up by Maddie Penner with 22 from 19 and Cordelia Griffith with 13 from 8. Chatterjee and Harris took 2 each for Surrey, with 2 for 12 and 2 for 22, both bowling 2 overs. For me, the player of the match in this game has to be Phoebe Franklin, with 48 from 23 and also a useful run out and catch in the field. Now moving on to the final Tier 1 game of the weekend, Thunder versus Bears, with Thunder taking the win by 7 wickets. The rain fell in the morning heavily, and it was a crucial toss to win in tough conditions. Thunder won and understandably put the Bears into bat first. Meg Austin and Izzy Wong laid the foundation with 29 from 23 and 9 from 11, but the Bears struggled to get going in tough conditions. I've put Grace Harris, it definitely wasn't. Laura Harris's quick 21 from 13 helped build their total, before Katie George was the glue, returning from a nasty injury with 30 not out from 33. And it's safe to say she put her body on the line with more dives in this innings than I think I can count. Bowling-wise for Thunder, Aussie Alana King was the star with 2 for 16 from her 4 overs. Cross, Graham, Sophie Morris and Carter all took 1. The Bears managed only 123 for 7 from their 20 overs. Conditions may have been onside with Thunder, but they managed to chase exceptionally, chasing down their total in the 19th over, ending on 124 for 3. Eve Jones managed a 1 aboard 23 at the top of the order, but her opening partner, Emma Lamb, on her 100th cap for Lancashire, took command of the chase with 60 not out from 48 balls. Tilly Castavan managed 25 before Ellie Fraukaud helped score the winning runs. We can't go without mentioning Phoebe Brett on her pro debut in an emergency professional contract from Worcestershire after Warwickshire lost 4 players through England. She took 2 for 15 from 4 overs, quite the performance. However, in a Thunder victory, Emma Lamb has to be the player of the match, with her 60 not out. Now looking at the Tier 1 table, Surrey are firmly at the top, with 7 wins from 9 and a game in hand on 33 points. The Blaze closely follow, having played 1 more with 31 points. The Bears are also still in it, with 28 points and 6 wins from 10. With the top 3 qualifying, pretty much everyone is still in with a slight chance, apart from Somerset in 8th. Hampshire and Lancashire in 4th and 5th are both on 21 points, whereas Essex and Durham in 6th and 7th are on 15 and 14. Somerset sit last, with no wins from their 9 games, their only points coming from a no result.
Next up, we're going to discuss the third T20 between England and India. England batted first at the Kia Oval, setting 171 for 9. We'll discuss the batting collapse in a minute. With India falling short by 5 runs with 166 for 5. There are 3 changes to this match, with Charlie Dean, Paige Schofield and Izzy Wong in, Lindsay Smith, Natsiva Brunt and Emma Lott out. Now, let's have a little discussion about that match.
I genuinely think that was the most impressive collapse I've ever seen in cricket. And I don't know whether it was because of kind of like the magnitude of the game, because even though at the end of the day these games do not matter, then I'm pretty sure they're not T20 championship points. They're literally just redundant T20s. I mean, to go from 146 for two after you've had Dunkley and White Hodge score 75 and 66 after struggling both of them in their own ways throughout the series, 146 for two to 168 for nine.
Yeah, and on this, what was there? 4 and a bit overs left when Alice Capsey came in, when the first wicket fell, or even the second wicket fell. I was just a bit speechless, like how we went about the rest of the chat, like setting the tone really and trying to get that big 200 plus score, which ideally they should have been on for. And I think Alice Capsey being promoted to 3, and we had Paige Schofield come in, who we know is an explosive batter in the T20 format. Obviously, she probably wanted to contribute a lot more than what she did, but I don't know, is it one of those that you potentially do see it when you've had such a big opening partnership? You do tend to see these collapses, and I'm pretty sure maybe Alex Hartley or on TMS that they mentioned they were just waiting for this to happen.
And it's true, but I also think it's just common sense in a way. I mean, why are you attempting a scoop so early on in your innings, Alice Capsey? Like, she's at the point now with England where she should have matured as a batter. And we had that stage kind of like a year and a half ago where she was really struggling to get going in innings. And she went away. She spent some time. She didn't spend some time for county, but she spent some time in the nets. And it kind of calmed down, but we're now back in this situation. And obviously, we don't know what message Charlotte Edwards has relayed to them in the dugout. But I think it's very unlikely that she told them to just play the shots they were. It was fascinating.
Yeah, it certainly would have been interested to hear the message that she gave to them. And I mean, she certainly would have probably told them to be brave and be positive, but you can be brave and be positive in a smart way. That doesn't necessarily mean ramp it when they've got a short fine leg ready to catch it. I mean, and we full well know how strong Alice Capsey is down the ground, and using the pace that was on show, why is she not using that strength of hitting straight back over the bowler's head or piercing the gaps and running really well between the wickets? And I do think it's worth noting that, again, Sophie Appleson is the only other batter to come in and score in double figures. And obviously we saw what she did in the last T20. I guess, is this a little point that she's coming to prove, saying, get me up the order?
I mean, if I'm Alice Capsey, I'm worried, because we said last episode that she's not performed, but she's been batting out of position. And she was in position this game, and it hasn't made any difference. But the other thing we really have to talk about, because it was quite something to watch, England's fielding in the second innings, when they didn't have very many runs to play with at one point. Some of the catches were just, some of them you can understand because of where they were positioned, but others were just baffling. And even Charlie Dean's catch, which has gone viral, it's become clear that she wasn't in the right place from things which have been said by the team. So it shouldn't have been as difficult as it was.
Yeah, and I also think one to note is how good was Lauren Bell's catch that went over the ropes for 6. Now, for me, to see her take that one-handed catch, but obviously land outside the rope, I was like, wow, where has that come from? But yeah, I completely agree. I think it just sort of goes back to the John Lewis era of just being a bit sloppy in our fielding, whereas seeing how we started against the West Indies and just seeing our approach in the field, we look like a completely different fielding unit. And I know from firsthand how important Charlotte Edwards takes fielding. So I certainly think she would have reflected that game, and I'd like to think she probably would have told them a few honest truths and gone back to them and said, this isn't good enough. So I'm certainly looking forward to the next 2 T20s to see where we're at and how we're going to try and get this series back to a leveler.
The other 2 things we should note as well is, obviously, with Nat Silverbrunt's absence, Tammy Beaumont was in as captain. And I mean, last T20, there were issues when Nat left the pitch with the fielding plans not matching the bowling plans, and those had definitely been cleared up, which was, I think, good for all involved. And also the death bowling from Wong, Eccleston, and Bell. I mean, I want to particularly highlight Izzy Wong because she has had quite the couple of years as far as England goes. And one of the things that people are most critical about regarding her is that she tends to have a really good over and then one ball just slips. Oh, I just hit my mic. And, and then one ball just slips. But the way she, Eccleston and Bell managed that closing stages was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I certainly think we've seen the growth of Lauren Bell over the past 3-4 years in an England shirt, and just how well she's coming into that role now. And we've seen and we've heard that she's been working with Matt Mason, who's done a fantastic job with her with working on that in swinger and away swinger, and just seeing how composed she looks at the top of her run up and running in and bowling some of those deliveries. You certainly wouldn't want to be a batter facing her. I do think the other person to notice was Lauren Filer's pace. She looked quick. I can't remember who she pinned on the helmet, but she looked quick, and certainly not many other female batters will be facing that pace week in, week out. So if we can keep Lauren Filer fit and bowling at a quick speed, I think she is just going to be so exciting for England, especially in the T20 and the ODI series coming up.
I completely agree, and I think one of the ways that we need to keep Lauren Filer fit is it seems to have been completely normalised that she just falls over when she's bowling. That's not a normal thing, even when bowlers are bowling at that pace. And we saw it actually with Katie George, who has obviously been hampered by back injuries, and she's kind of sorted it out because she's got stronger. But Filer, you risk, I mean, it's the knees as well. I mean, we talk a lot about ACL injuries, etc., in women's cricket. The way she's falling multiple times every game, you risk doing yourself some serious damage. So they need to work out how they can kind of build up strength in other ways or adapt the action slightly to make sure she's not risking injuring herself every time she bowls.
Yeah, and I think a funny one to notice was back in the Ashes series where Mitchell Starc was on comms and Lauren Filer was wearing these brand new spikes that certainly weren't bowling boots. And Mitchell Starc spoke about why she's not wearing Asics women's spikes. And I think he sort of actually maybe went into the England camp or maybe spoke to someone. And then her next match, she was wearing them. And it's like she was a completely different bowler. She had that right structure around her feet. And I do think it does go back to the big discussion that women in sports, we're built differently compared to, or women fast bowlers, they're certainly built differently to male fast bowlers. Like the shoes and the equipment and things that we wear to support us certainly need to be made to suit a female cricketer.
Sure, and I think we're seeing a rise of that quite significantly. I mean, I'm going to raise necks as an example of that. Women's cricket kit, Grey Nicks have brought out the gem stuff. Neon are also a very good one when it comes to women's stuff. There are now brands that are getting better at creating women's only kit, but players don't necessarily have access to that because we talk a lot about sponsorship in women's cricket, and for a lot of players, getting a sponsorship from a Grey Nicks isn't achievable because of the level of player they sponsor. I mean, I don't think I've seen any tier 2 players, as an example, using Grey Nicks kit. And there's a few brands you see consistently. Neon are very good at sponsoring women's cricketers. So shout out to them. And they have an incredible range of kit. But it's how we make sure that it's not just the England stars getting sponsorships. Because ironically, they're the people who probably need them the least. It's your tier 2 players and your tier 3 players who could probably really use that additional support.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And hopefully going forward with more exposure that tier 2 and tier 3 cricket will get, hopefully cricket sponsors and people out there supporting the women's game will help and support the next generation of cricketers coming through. Because who knows, in 5 years' time, someone who's playing in tier 3 could be the next tier 1 opening batter, opening bowler. Who knows? Like, there's someone out there, and if we can support them at the start of their cricketing journey, I think that will go a long way for someone to be successful.
In other news, England, quite literally just before we recorded this podcast, have announced their ODI squad for the India ODI series, which will follow after these two final T20s. First of all, the squad. It's made up of Emma Lott from Warwickshire, Tammy Beaumont from the Blaze, Lauren Bell from Hampshire, Maya Bouchier from Hampshire, Alice Capsey from Surrey, Kate Cross from Lancashire, Alice Davidson-Richards from Surrey, Charlie Dean from Somerset, Sophia Dunkley from Surrey, Sophie Eccleston from Lancashire, Lauren Filer from Durham, Amy Jones from the Blaze, Emma Lamb from Lancashire, Natsara Bunt from the Blaze, who is also captaining, and Lindsay Smith from Hampshire. The main headlines are that it's a 15-player squad, and Bouchier and Sophie Eccleston return following the last ODI series against West Indies earlier on in the season. Mahika Gore, Sarah Glenn, and Heather Knight come out. Knight due to injury, Gore and Glenn presumably just for selection reasons.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this squad, I'm certainly excited to see Emma Lamb's name back in this ODI series, and hopefully she can go out there and showcase exactly what she's been doing for Thunder, because for me, she's just taken to tier one county cricket like a duck to water. Runs week in, week out, and just performing. And this call up for this ODI series is certainly welcomed. I know that she was in the ODI series against West Indies, but for her to come back into this England team after everything she's experienced over the years of having an England centrally contract to now not, I think she's really the pinnacle of tier two cricket right now, and trying to get her name back into that England side and being a regular performer at the top of the order.
100%, because she obviously had that back injury, didn't she? And she had to have surgery. And I think she was probably unlucky to lose her England contract so quickly. I think ironically, if she was a bowler, she probably would have kept it. But she's come back in, she's made a real point. The other name I really want to highlight is Emma Lott, who has really taken this England opportunity with both hands. I mean, people who follow women's cricket will know that Em has been at the top of the game for a very long time. Previously in the regional game for the Central Sparks, and now in the county game for the Bears. And she did have opportunities previously, I think, which were both COVID affected. But she's actually spoken about how she thinks that was a blessing, because she has spoken openly about her autism diagnosis and the anxiety that comes alongside cricket for her, and about how now she's developed so much as a player and a person. So it enables her to show her true self when she gets these opportunities. So to see her absolutely smashing it with an ODI World Cup coming up in India in October and a home T20 World Cup coming up next year is super exciting, and also a positive sign for the pathway of regional and county cricket.
Yeah, 100%. And then you've obviously got names like Alice Davidson-Richards, who's coming back in and out of that England side. Obviously made her Test debut, scored the 100, got a wicket on debut, to then never play Test cricket again. So is this the return of ADR that we're seeing in an England shirt, whether that's T20 or ODI? And I absolutely love that Charlotte Edwards is going down this route of getting her back in, because she's certainly an experienced, mature cricketer who knows her game inside out, and she's really handy with the ball and really handy with the bat. So yeah, for me, she's a great name to have in your side, and also a great person in general to have in your side as well. I guess a discussion looking at that is, are we going to see Sarah Glenn back in an England shirt anytime soon? Or, I guess for fans, it could be a little bit upsetting. She's obviously done so well in an England shirt for so many years, but there is that argument of, does she turn the ball? Does she put the batters under threat? Has she been found out by oppositions now? And yes, she may still be up there in the world rankings in the ODI in the T20 series. But who is we're having that conversation again, who is our next leg spinner coming through the system and knocking on the door? And it looks like we're going down the two left-hand spinner route again, which I don't mind. But I think Lindsay Smith certainly got found out against India for not varying her pace and just being too samey. Whereas Sophie Eccleston back on return, I think, she was exceptional again with the ball.
I mean, I completely agree. I mean, you have to feel for Sarah Glenn. I don't know whether this was a sign or not, but when the contracts were announced, her only being offered a 1-year contract rather than the 2, I was shocked at the time. But she's been in this situation before. A couple of years ago, she dropped out the ODI squad and wasn't really playing in T20 cricket, and she made her way back. But the question has to be asked, has the game moved on more since then? And are we reaching a point now where spinning the ball is key in women's cricket? Because obviously we had a very long period when not many women's spinners span the ball. And I think leg spin is a bit of a grey area at the moment in women's cricket in England, because the obvious choices, like Johanna Baker's, as we said last week, aren't performing at the level they tend to, and also probably don't have the batting experience you want them to. Whereas the thing that was positive for Sarah Glenn was that she could hit a few runs. Next up on Two Tiers Deep, we're opening a discussion up to you, the listeners. Next week, we'll be discussing the coverage of the women's game, looking at things like streaming quality, the pros and cons of joint versus separate social media accounts, the issues of double-header commentary teams, and more. If you have any thoughts, please do send them in. You can either find us on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, or you can email me on rosatalksball@gmail.com.
On to the most exciting part of the podcast for me. This is Tier 1 and Tier 2 Team of the Week. So let's start with Tier 2, and maybe we need to note that there was only 2 games that went ahead, so only 4 teams that this Team of the Week has been selected from, and they will be from Middlesex, Sussex, Leicestershire and Derbyshire. So here is my Tier 2 Team of the Week. So coming in, opening the bat, I got Izzy Routledge from Middlesex, with Finty Trussler from Middlesex as well at the top 2. Coming in at number 3, Nancy Harmon from Sussex. Number 4, Scarlett Hughes, and she's my wicketkeeper from Leicestershire. Number 5, this is my captain, Saskia Hawley from Middlesex. With number 6, Gaia Goal from Middlesex as well. Number 7, all-rounder position with Lucy Hyam. Number 8, Francesca Sweets. Now, noted that she could come in higher up in the order, but I've put her at number 8 for now, only because of the other performances. Coming in at number 9, Eve O'Neill from Sussex. Number 10, Rhiannon Nolan-Davis from Derby. Number 11, Ava Lee from Sussex. And my 12th is Adriana Darlow from Derby. Let's hear your Tier 2 Team of the Week.
Now, my Tier 2 Team of the Week, which actually has some different names, which is surprising given the amount of cricket played. Opening the batting, I've got Izzy Routledge from Middlesex alongside Phoebe Wilkinson from Sussex. Coming in at 3, it has to be Nancy Harmon for her iconic 77 not out. 4, and also my captain, I've got Saskia Hawley from Middlesex. At number 5, I've got Scarlett Hughes from Leicestershire. At number 6, I've got Pippa Sproul from Middlesex as my wicketkeeper, with a handy 12 not out and a stumping. Coming in at 7, it had to be Lucy Hyam from Leicestershire. At 8, Ella Porter from Derbyshire. At 9, Adriana Darlow from Derbyshire. At 10, Emma Thatcher from Leicestershire. And at 11, Rhiannon Nolan-Davies from Derbyshire. My 12th, I had to put 2 players because they quite literally got exactly the same bowling figures. Eve O'Neill from Sussex and Francesca Clark from Derbyshire, both with 2 for 27 from 4. It's time to look at Tier 1. And my Team of the Week, it's safe to say it was a tough one, with a lot of games of cricket and a lot of performances. So I have included some shout-outs for afterwards. But firstly, the team. Opening the batting, Emma Lamb from Thunder and Rihanna Southby from Hampshire, who is also my captain. Coming in at 3, I've got Lauren Winfield-Hill from Essex, who is my keeper, for her 2 catches. At 4, Fran Wilson from Somerset, with 55 from 32. At 5, Heather Graham from the Blaze, who had quite the game week. At 6, it had to be Maddie Villiers from Durham. At 7, Phoebe Franklin from Surrey. At 8, and I apologise in advance for the fact she's batting so low, I've only just realised this is going to make you laugh, Catherine Bryce with her 4 for 13. At 9, Alana King from Thunder, followed by another Thunder player at 10 in Kate Cross. And at 11, I had to give a shout out to Phoebe Brett for her Warwickshire debut. My 12, Ellie Claridge, who was unlucky to miss out. Some other shout outs include, but are not limited to, Susie Bates, Katie George, Eva Gray, Rebecca Odgers, Elise Perry, and Kira Chaffley.
Right, for my Tier 1 Team of the Week, this certainly caused quite a bit of headache, leaving quite a few big names out, but I had to go with what was in front of me. So, opening the batting, I've got Rebecca Odgers from Somerset. Number 2, Rihanna Southby, and she's my wicketkeeper from Hampshire. Number 3, my all-rounder in Maddie Villiers from Durham. 4, 5, and 6 is a big Blaze contingency. I've gone Heather Graham at 4, Ella Claridge at 5, and Catherine Bryce at 6. Coming in at 7 for her explosive late order runs, and I know what she can do with the ball, is Phoebe Franklin from Surrey. Coming in at 8, again, another all-rounder. This is from Somerset, Amanda Jade Wellington. My captain, Eva Gray from Essex. Coming in at number 10, Kate Cross from Lancashire. And again, another shout-out, Phoebe Brett, who's my 11th, coming in on debut for Warwickshire. Now, my 12th is so unlucky to miss out, and I mean, she should certainly be in it for 100 caps for Lancashire, but my 12th is Emma Lamb, and please don't hate me for that. Okay, so I've got quite a few shout-outs who certainly could be in this Tier 1 Team of the Week, so I'm going to rattle them off really quickly. So I've got Susie Bates, Holly Armitage, both the Turners, Sophia and Phoebe, Eve Jones, Kirsty Gordon. I'm so sorry, Elise Perry, but I'd love you to be in my Team of the Week all the time, but unfortunately not this week. Fred Davis, Fred Kemp, Kira Chatley, Katie George. They are my shout-outs who should potentially be in my Tier 1 Team of the Week, but there was just so many fantastic performances.
Can I just say you could make a team out of your shout-outs?
Literally, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I've got a keeper in there, and I've got Armitage, who could be, or Gordon, who could be a captain. I'm sorted. I could have 2 Tier 1 Team of the Weeks.
I mean, it's a tough gig, Tier 1, because obviously tends to be more cricket each week. And yeah. I mean, Emma Lamb, bless her heart, just couldn't make it in. 60 not out, and 21.
Yeah, just wanted to cause a bit of a stir at the top of the order, you know. She's got a call up for England. She won't be offended by being out of my Tier 1 Team of the Week. It's fine.
To be fair, I was torn about putting Rebecca Odgers in purely because of where she's come from. I mean, it feels like she's appeared out of nowhere this season, and to score the half century at the top of the order, it's impressive.
Yeah. And again, I do kind of have to give a shout out to Rihanna Southby for scoring 2 back-to-back 50s for Hampshire at the top of the order. And I mean, I guess, who knows? Is she knocking on doors for Charlotte Edwards long term? Who I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I mean, she has to be, doesn't she? Because the only reasoning that she wasn't was a batting. And I mean, it's very clear in very dramatic fashion. I did a double take when I saw that first 11 when she was opening the batting. She's proven that she can bat.
Literally, I reckon we should fire out a poll of my Tier 2 team against your Tier 2 team, and people have got to vote who they think would win, and then my Tier 1 be your Tier 1.
Battle of the cricketers. I like it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Literally. On to the last part of Tiers 2 Deep, and this is over to the listeners' questions. We've had a few questions come in this week, so let's answer a few.
First of all, we've had one from Ben. We're going to keep last names anonymous for GDPR reasons. Do you think there should be promotion and relegation from Tier 1 to Tier 3?
At the moment, I'm just going to be quite blunt and say no. And I think the answer is obvious. The funding from the ECB is not there from Tier 1 to Tier 3 yet. And the imbalance of contracted and professional players in Tier 1 to semi-pro, I guess, at 2 to non-semi-professional in Tier 3 Yeah, I think not at the moment, but who's to say 5+ years later down the line, there could be certainly some movements between tier 1 and tier 2. And then I think the question would be, when Glamorgan and Yorkshire move up to tier 1, what's going to happen to the numbers in tier 2?
I'd agree. I think I'd also say that there were teams who weren't from tier 2 who didn't even put forward bids to be in tier 1 initially. So clearly aren't yet at a point where they feel they can properly support their women's teams. And we talk a lot in women's sports about not getting ahead of ourselves and kind of, growing what we have and then increasing. And I'm going to raise football actually, because we've had a lot of instances in the championship of teams having to drop out because they can't fund or they don't want to fund their women's teams. Reading had to go all the way down to tier 6 after being at the top tier of women's football for a very long time. And we also saw, it's gone out of my head which team, but a lot of the listeners will know, who were involved in the promotion battle to get into the top tier of women's football. And the team hadn't filled in or met the requirements. If they'd got promotion, they wouldn't have been able to go up. And football is, I'd say, about 10 times ahead of cricket right now. So if that is happening in football, we really can't get ahead of ourselves. And yes, it would make things more exciting in the future. I think tier 2 to tier 3 is more realistic, but having anyone near tier 1 in its current form, it just wouldn't work. And then moving on to a question from Lucy on Instagram. How do they decide which counties move to tier 1 each year?
ECB ...
I mean, we saw that there was a bidding process initially for the 8 tier 1 teams. And they set requirements the counties had to reach, and they had to show how they were going to meet those requirements, which gave us kind of the original 8. And then Yorkshire and Glamorgan were the 2 counties who nearly missed out. Could be argued only on location, but also on resource-wise. And they were both due to come in 2027, but for reasons we won't go into, because it's a controversial one, Yorkshire are now coming in next year instead. And the ECB have said that in an ideal world, 2 more tier 1 counties appear in 2029. So I guess it would just be the same process again.
I think it'd probably be the same process again. And then I guess later down the line, once they've got that additional two more teams in 2029, then there may be a promotion and a relegation sort of table. Who knows? I guess we'll wait and see.
And then one from Jamie on Instagram. He said, are the county double headers actually working, or does the 100 work better than this?
I mean, if we're honest, the 100's certainly had a few more years to experience this, and they've done that exceptionally well. But from what I've seen with the county double headers in tier 1, I think they've worked well. And I think they work really well when it is the same men's side and women's side playing against the same men's opposition and women's opposition. For me personally, I think they work really well. But I think with the scheduling of double headers, they need to be looked at as weekends, or if they're going to do it in school term, invite the children along to get those crowds in. But for me, I'm always for a double header, and I know the players certainly are from a player's perspective.
I mean, I think the 100 are always going to do it better because it's billed and has been billed from day one as one product. You buy a ticket, it gets you into 2 games of cricket, same teams are playing. And it's also, I think, important to note that it is quite literally the very best cricket from around the world. Whereas one of the concerns that has been raised about the tier 2 doubleheaders is that obviously with it not being the professional game, it's not the same standards as tier 1 or not even the 100. So you kind of have fans turning up maybe with unrealistic expectations at times about what players they're going to see on show. And obviously that will develop over time. And I think it works as a concept. But obviously, as you said, there's the massive issue that the women a lot of times are playing on weekdays during the day. And you're relying quite heavily on the counties to market both teams equally. And whilst a lot are, there are some that aren't. And the men still take priority And also from a logistical point of view, we saw it in Northampton on Sunday that they called the Tier 2 game off quite early, from what I've heard, basically so they could prioritise getting the men's game on.
Yeah, so I think the issue with the double headers is whoever plays first, and 9 times out of 10 it is the women, they unfortunately don't get that longer window that they would get if it was a standalone match. There's obviously a cut-off time, and from that cut-off time, I think you have like half an hour grace window, whereas if it wasn't a double header, you'd have that extra hour. Yeah, from being there on Sunday and watching, they certainly probably did call it off earlier, but every time the groundsman went to take the covers off, the rain started again. So in hindsight, I do think it was unlikely that the women were going to play, but it's just absolute sort of laws that the sun was shining when it came to the men's match and they were able to get their full 20 overs in. But we can argue we've seen that within the 100 matches as well.
Sure, I mean, we saw it in the Eliminator. I think it was Welsh Fire and Northern Superchargers that it was called off very quickly at the Oval. And Welsh Fire qualified because they were higher in the group. And then literally 10 minutes later, the sun came out. And from a logistics point of view, they have a weather radar, so you can't claim that you didn't know that was going to happen. So it's definitely a universal problem, and probably as the game grows, I mean, commercially, the men's game is more beneficial for the counties, and we've got to understand that. And we do understand that. But it's also, on the other hand, in order to grow women's cricket, sometimes you need to view it on a more equal level.
Yeah, and that could maybe be something we discuss later down the line with, I guess, looking at it as an equal playing field. But even from myself as a player perspective, I full well know that the men's cricket, T20 Blasts, 100, certainly does generate and bring in more social media, more marketing, more money. And I think that's something as a whole and as a public, we probably need to look at the bigger picture sometimes when these decisions happen. But we are where we are at the moment, and yeah, we'll see what happens later down the line.
And then the last question of the week is an interesting one. It's from Go Wallender on X, and they have said, what would you say is the biggest opportunity in women's cricket in the next few years? And what would you say is the biggest threat?
I mean, the biggest opportunity is young girls coming out of school and not having to worry about what their next steps are. I guess they can literally finish A levels and sign a contract the next day and be on a full-time salary. Whereas even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that certainly wasn't the case. You had to work, study, try and fit cricket around your current lifestyle. Whereas I think going forward, it's flipped massively the other way. And did you say what is the biggest concern? The biggest concern, certainly looking at it from a player's perspective, maybe would be all of the franchise competitions that open up around the world. If we think of the likes of Danny White-Hodge, for example, she's wore an England shirt for how many years? And she's been so successful around the globe in T20 comps. Now, if we start to see all these franchise comps open up around the world, is the women's game going to lose those talented players like we've seen in the men's game? We've seen James Vince, for example, from Hampshire. He only comes back and plays T20 Blast for Hampshire. Other than that, he goes around the globe and plays all the franchise comps and earns the money that's available to him, because why wouldn't you? You've got to become selfish and look at that perspective of a financial position going forward, especially if you're more experienced in the game and your career maybe in an international or county shirt is coming to an end.
For sure. I think also we're seeing franchise teams getting involved in county cricket, like as an example, the sale of Hampshire. And as far as cricket governance is concerned, I can see why that is a concern. And it currently is an issue in men's cricket. And the counties really struggle to retain some of the best players because they can't compete with the salaries. And in women's cricket, Obviously, historically, players like Danny Wyatt-Hodge won't have been paid their full value for many years. So at the back end of their career, you completely understand why they would want to go play in the IPL or the WBBL, or if there's appears an American league for women's cricket, over maybe the English counterparts.
Thank you for listening to Two Tiers Deep with me, Chloe Hill.
And me, Rosa Simpkin. If you'd like to get in touch, you can contact us on rosatalksball@gmail.com. You can find me on @rosatalksball on all social media platforms.
Or you can find me on all social media platforms @Chloe_Hill97.